Good afternoon. We call the Tuesday, June 14th meeting to order. Can we please stand though preceded by the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to thank all of you for attending today's meeting, those that are here in person and those that are listening via the internet. Please silence your cell phones or your electronic devices. If they should ring, we would be more than happy to collect $50 for futures. So please, please, please silence all of your electronic devices. In order for the meeting to move in an efficient manner, we ask that you just refrain from any clapping, speaking out during the sessions. Today, I would like to introduce my guest of the dais. To my far left, in her absence, we have Linda Cuthbert, who's boarding a plane right now to Europe, so we hope that she's having fun. Next to Mrs. Cuthbert, we have Dr. John Hill, representing District 1. Next to Mr. Hill, we have Attorney Ted Doran, School Board Attorney. To my far right, I have Ms. Connie Wines, our clerk. Next to Mrs. Wines, I have Mrs. Linda Costello, representing District 4. Next to Mrs. Costello, I have Vice Chairman Melanie Johnson, representing District 5, followed by the Superintendent, Mr. James T. Russell, and I am Ida Wright, Chairman, District 2. Items for approval on the agenda are items 2.02, 4.01, 14.01, 17.01, 20.01 through 20.04, 21.01, and 21.02. Today we have 2 times for public participation, one shortly requiring the approval of this agenda and items for general interest pertaining to public education in Volusia County, and later for the proposed amendments on the adoption for this evening. At each board meeting, we have a member of the school board to provide comments pertaining to the district's vision statement. Tonight, that honor goes to Dr. John Hill.
Thank you, Chairwoman Wright. Tonight, I'd like to say that it's obviously a little bit relaxed time in the school setting with school being out, but we are still progressing forward, trying to bring about better changes that help the school system improve. We are working on more policies and trying to adopt changes to policies that make common sense and good sense for the schools. Reported to you in the past that I think the career technical education, vocational, is improving. I've talked to several folks who are teaching that at several of our high schools, and they gain a sense that there's a groundswing and a momentum, and I'm happy to report that some of our representatives in the community have established money from Tallahassee to make our school system better, and so over the next several months, I think we'll be impressed with what we're able to do with more money with that regard, and I think that's going to open up some unique advantages to our students as a school system in general and help meet the agenda of what we're doing as a school board. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Moving on to agenda item 2.01. Mr. Superintendent, did you receive any requests to remove anything from the consent agenda or the agenda?
I did not, Madam Chair.
Okay. Moving to item 2.02, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
The motion has been properly moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, the same signs. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. At this time, we'll have public participation. Thank you. When your name is called, please state your name and the address for the record. First, we have Ms. Kim Short, then Mr. Jim Cameron.
Kim Short, 6089 Spruce Point Circle, Port Orange, Florida.
I wanted to talk about something that's been going on in the schools because it's the end of school year, and that's displacement of teachers. There's been 2 teachers who were displaced from Sweetwater, and I have to say I do not agree with either one of them being displaced, but more importantly, the process and the procedures that go along with the displacement of them is more of what I'm concerned about. When these teachers do not get, I guess, adequately notified that they're going to be displaced, so they're not told by a specific time, which I believe that time was May 31st, they cannot attend the job fair. So they're being put into other schools, and if they wanted to, let's say, go and interview for something else, then they're not able to. The concern I have is that, in both of the cases in my children's school, these teachers are being placed into schools that are a good 35 minutes from home. Both these teachers have 1-year-olds. One of them is working on her doctorate. And you have to understand, when you're sitting back and looking at the common sense of it all, if you are a teacher who now has to travel 35 minutes and has a 1-year-old and is working on your doctorate, and this is a teacher that, just to be clear, I would want my child in their class, and you understand how high my expectations are. Why would you stay in Volusia County when you can go to another county and get paid more money? I feel like we are doing that around this county, and I understand that not every personality is going to gel. But if you're in a city, like let's say Port Orange, and there's another job that needs to be filled within the city of Port Orange, why would you not let that person go to that school? It just doesn't make any sense. So I need to hear from my school board members to explain to me how that works in your mind, that it would actually make sense, because I've tried to go through it like 50 ways till Tuesday, and I'm not quite understanding why we would, let that happen. Speaking about just reviews in general, I got an opportunity to go to the review for Mr. Russell. I just want to say that I'm not taking this out on you as a board, because I am going to take blame myself that I have never seen this process or looked at this process ever before. I was more in shock of how bad the document is that they use. I'm more disappointed about the whole thing, because coming from the world of business, nobody would ever use a document like that. I even brought it home and showed my husband, and I've showed I'm people in the business world, and it's pretty much, that's where we're at. I went back and I looked at my document from when I'd worked at Federated Department Stores, and I brought it with me just so you can understand. I mean, there's so much that gets tied back in to how you come up with a plan to go forward. And I didn't get a chance to see Mr. Russell's portion of it, but I will say, just knowing him, I'm sure he had a lot of documentation. And I know it's not a good tool, but I think that by now, anybody who's seen it, and Ms. Wright, I have to say, I'm going to place the most blame with you. I think that this should have been rolled out and trained. So I'd love to go into this more. I have a lot to say about it, but thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jim Cameron?
Good evening. I'm Jim Cameron, Senior Vice President, Government Relations, Daytona Regional Chamber. And wanted to say, in the last 15 years, this district's cost for health insurance premiums has increased from 21 to 54 million. And at the same time, recent economic studies have shown that nationwide the cost of providing medical benefits to employees has increased dramatically, like more than double the rate of inflation. And as I've stated up here several times before, is that the Affordable Care Act will cause these costs to continue to increase, and the new Florida Insurance Commissioner, David Altmaier, I'm hearing is already getting calls for increases for next year from insurance companies. But also, to quote from Saturday's News Journal editorial, Volusia schools can no longer afford to kick the can down the road. Change is inevitable. The district must realign its insurance program with reality. That will require many employees to pay more out of pocket for health expenses. But the private sector is facing the same situation whereby employees are having to pay an increased share for their health insurance, and for the most part, pay isn't any better. But I wanted to stress, in the last 4 years, the Volusia District financial condition ratio has decreased 37%. We've gone from 27th to 41st in the state of Florida. And there's a variety of reasons for that. One being the elimination of federal education stimulus programs that were put in because of the recession, but these are non-recurring dollars I want to stress. And while the district has received like $27 million for fiscal years 2015, 16, and 16, 17, you're having to hire more teachers to meet the requirements of the class size amendment from 2002, and that's at the cost of like $10 million, and then $8.4 million for pay increases that were paid out of reserve funds in 2014-15. But I wanted to close by saying I wanted to commend all sectors, all departments, everyone involved for their part in raising this district from a C to a B district. But we still have a long road ahead. And a quote from Vince Lombardi, the only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 4.01, approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
The motion has been properly moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those that are opposed, the same sign. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. Moving down to items 15.01, superintendent's announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tomorrow, Volusia County Schools Job Fair will be held at Mainland High School from 8 to 3. Madam Chair, we have over 300 applicants, and as we speak, Futures is having a reception for them this evening. The next regular school board meeting will be Wednesday, June 29th, 2016, at 5:30 p.m. here in the boardroom in the DeLand Administrative Complex.
Thank you. Moving down to 16.0.
Mueller will come and make a presentation. And while she's coming up, Madam Chair, I must apologize. Our board docs, it's down on the entire East Coast, and the 174 artifacts that you all used for my evaluation were to be uploaded, and the system has been down, so I'm sorry at this time they have not been uploaded, but as soon as it's back online, they will be uploaded for the public to review.
Thank you. It's called technology. Things happen.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Russell. I wanted to bring to you, because there was a lot of discussion in the last few weeks, the amount of money that the board has received in FEFP between 14-15 and to the 2016-17 budget. And that amount, as you can see in this first slide, is the revenue in millions. We had $27.12 million additional that we are receiving, and that is over the 2 years of 15-16 and 16-17. We also have a prior period adjustment millage of a decrease in $0.27 million. And then we also have a reduction in transfer to capital, which, as you know, was happening each year. We're reducing $2 million. So for the 2 years of 15-16 and 16-17, we're decreasing that transfer by $4 million, leaving us with a net increase in revenue of 22.85 million. And while that sounds like a large amount of money, we recognize that our expenses are numerous and that no budget from year to year stays the same. We recognize that there are cost increases, but especially in this case, what is unique to school districts, and particularly in Florida, we are increasing our staffing to meet class size legislation. And to that end, we budgeted for 59 additional teaching positions this year, and we're budgeting for 90 additional teaching positions next year due to our enrollment growth. So between the teachers needing to be added for class size and for additional programs and school support, we've used up 22 of that million. We've used up 10.69 million of that 22, just on increasing our teaching staff alone. We also increased salaries in 2014-15. We know that when we increase salaries, we have to pay those out in future years. That increased by 8.34 million. So together that's almost $20 million of that amount. Also, we know we've had expansion for charter schools, and in particular, Ivy Hahn expanded, and we had Catapult Academy. That's another $3 million that we needed to budget for. We also know that when we receive our FEFP, there are many categories that we show and break out to you for specific programs, such as instructional materials and digital learning. The amount of increase attributed to those programs that we have to allocate to those specific programs is $2.22 million. We also, this year, and we won't know any additional for next year until next spring, but we had McKay scholarship increases of $400,000. We also had insurance increases of $840,000. $500,000 approximately of that is the change from year to year just in our premiums due to the increase. Even though it was mostly flat, we still saw an increase of about $500,000. Contractual increases due to contracts such as GCA and other contracts that we are required to automatically increase, some of them based on the CPI from year to year, of almost $900,000. We expanded our school resource officers in Daytona, in the Daytona area, for $130,000. And our non-instructional budgets, which is adding back security and maintenance for next year, those things that have been cut, many positions from those budgets during the recession that we need to add back, particularly in our technology security area, and to ramp up for our capital projects. Not everything can be charged to the capital fund, as we know that there are support positions that are not directly related to capital that we do need to budget for in our operating funds, which is the general fund. And then we have a miscellaneous area of 1.88 million, which includes a budget for proration, and it also includes some hiring incentives for teachers for next year. And in addition to that, it includes, that was for the critical shortage areas, and then some additional software of almost $1 million that formerly was paid for by Race to the Top, which much of that is instructional or licenses for instructional technology that now must be paid by the general fund. So that all adds up to over $30 million. So you can see the money is allocated quite quickly. We also had a change in the assigned fund balance that we appropriated for our budget deficit this year of $6.3 million. To offset some of that, those increased appropriations, we have measures that were taken when we did our budget for this year and for next year. We've factored in known teacher retirement savings for 15-16 and 16-17 of $6.5 million, so that is considered savings. Employee benefit reductions of $1.33 million. We also made 6.4% in cuts to central office departments, both in salary and non-salary budgets of $2.25 million this year. We have instructional and support program cuts of 1.42, some savings in transportation diesel fuel, and some additional revenue, mostly in the Medicaid area, of 1.25, which adds up to savings of a little over $13 million. In this summary page, you can see that $22.85 million additional revenue netted out against the total appropriations of $30 million, leaves us with a shortage of $7.37 million. And then the $6.33 million deficit leaves us with a shortage of $13.7 million. Of all those measures taken, we're still short about $560,000. And again, this is fluid for next year, of course. This includes our 16-17 budget, which, you know, we've presented the tentative or the initial in our workshop. So it is fluid still, but I just wanted you to see that we really, although it sounds like a lot of money, that $27.1 million, we still feel pain of reductions, and we still have to find additional monies for these necessary increases and to hire additional teaching staff. Do you have any questions?
Any questions, Linda? Melanie?
No.
John?
I've heard this.
And this does not include our fourth CAL, correct? This is through the third CAL up to this point?
No, that was through the fourth calc.
This is through,
This was through what we actually presented to you in the budget workshop.
okay. And I know I've been asked about GCA, why did we give them a raise? But that's part of their contract, am I correct? That was automatic.
That is correct. It's actually only about $20,000 for next year. It's based on the CPI from the previous July 1st, which is 0.2% from July of 2015. So that's the additional amount that we have to factor in for next year.
And a non-instructional budget, because I think the assumption is that we could pull that out of our half-cent sales tax, but we aren't able to because
those are really operational positions. They're not directly related to actually performing those areas that are in the projects.
Can you give an example of operational position so everybody can understand?
Yes, for instance, we have the need to hire a purchasing buyer, which when we're purchasing for the capital projects, all the furniture and the also the technology that we'll be purchasing. We have a lot of purchasing to do, but that's considered an operational expense, and it's not directly related to the capital project itself. Now, for instance, we can charge some of our USAs, just the ones specifically that would be working on implementing and deploying all of the new technology hardware and the infrastructure. But we cannot include somebody who's indirectly working in the technology department. It has to be, and we have time and attendance that we have to account for each one of those USAs and what they're working on. And sometimes, for instance, a USA might go out and they might work on a projector, repairing a projector, but then they also might work on something that that we purchased through our LCIF monies or our sales tax where we're implementing. So those would be 3 different cost accountings of their salaries and benefits. Because even within the capital fund, we would have to split that out to each project.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Superintendent?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other presentations?
No, ma'am.
Moving to 17.01, administrative appointments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be done by Mrs. Dana Page Pender, our Chief of Human Resources.
Good evening, Madam Chair, School Board members, Superintendent Russell. It's my pleasure to present the following Superintendent's Assistant Principal Administrative recommendations, and when I call their names. Estelle Calloway, teacher at University High, to the position of Assistant Principal at Southwestern Middle. Ms. Calloway began her career with Volusia County Schools in 2005 and has been motivating students ever since then. Ms. Calloway's certification areas are in educational leadership, middle grades integrated curriculum, and exceptional student education. Dr. Curtis Nash, Assistant Principal at Lake Brantley High School in Seminole County, to the position of Assistant Principal at University High School. Dr. Nash began his career in Georgia in 1994 as a band director and has had the opportunity to inspire many students throughout his career. Dr. Nash's certification areas are educational leadership and principal. Mr. Paul Struska, Assistant Principal at Kings Trail Elementary in Jacksonville, Florida, to the position of Assistant Principal of Volusia Pines Elementary. Mr. Struska began his career in 2008, where he's had the opportunity to serve the students of Duval County. Mr. Struska's certifications are in the areas of educational leadership, elementary education, music, and Spanish.
Madam Chair, the superintendent recommends the appointment of these individuals.
You've heard the recommendation from the superintendent. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
The motion has been properly moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those that are opposed, the same sign. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. And we just want to congratulate all of our new appointees.
Welcome.
Moving down to 18.01, District Advisory Committee Annual Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This presentation will be by Ms. Nancy Waite, Director for Community Information Services, and Mrs. Leslie LaRue, Chairman of the District Advisory Committee.
Good evening, Chairman Wright, members of the board, and Mr. Russell. It is my pleasure to be here with you with our chairman of the District Advisory, Leslie LaRue, who has just recently been reelected as chairman for next year. And as required by the bylaws for the District Advisory Committee, we're here to make a presentation of what our year was like.
Thank you, Nancy. The District Advisory Committee, DAC, is comprised of a school advisory council representative from each school. Additional representatives are appointed by each school board member or other groups. And so far, I haven't seen that, so now I didn't even know you guys could do that. So that's pretty exciting that you can have people come in and join us. There are 8 monthly meetings, and we alternate between Mainland and Deltona High School. And DAC is represented on the calendar committee and teacher of the year selection committee, which I have to admit, I'm kind of greedy and I love doing both of those, so I am happy to do those. In attendance, 61% of all members attended half of the scheduled meetings, and 7 schools had members with 100% attendance, and you can read there which schools those were. Principals at schools with low or no representation were contacted to help improve attendance, and I think that's vitally important because it's great to share that information back with your own SAC of what's happening. I mean, the minutes are very in-depth, so you feel like you're there, but there's just little different parts of conversations you can glean from, conversations that happen in the audience. So far, we had our topics of we have to have the student progression plan every single year, and that's amazing since I've been attending since 2009 to see how much that has changed from when I first started to the present and see all these things these seniors have to do in order to graduate. It's unbelievable. High school academies, online learning, student code of conduct, testing, variances, academies, legislation and transportation, and hazardous walk zone, SAC accreditation and technology, and then school uniforms, half-cent update, and safety and security. And there were just a lot of pieces that you just take for granted and don't know, and it's reassuring to know that there is a plan at every single school to how to keep our students safe, which we know they're safe all the time and they always feel safe, which is wonderful, but it's great to know that the adults know that plan. For our 2016-2017 year, we have same officers. I was a re-elected chairman and Angela Kopnicki vice chairman, and we will be discussing topics for next year. So if you have any input or something you would like to see discussed and shared with the community, please let us know as we develop that. Do you have any questions?
Do parents give you your topics?
Sometimes we'll get suggestions, but really not very often. But we welcome anything that someone would like to see addressed and presented to the group, for sure.
We're also very flexible during the year. If there's something that's timely that needs to be discussed with the committee, then we can change that schedule of meetings.
And it's a great way to really, I mean, you all go, and it's a wonderful way to interact with you and with the superintendent, because he's always willing to take questions, and same with anybody that there has presented. So it's a great opportunity.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you, Ms. LaRue.
Thank you.
Moving to 19.01, public comments. No cards? Okay. Moving to items 20.01 through 20.04, Superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These school board policy amendments will be presented by Mr. Michael Dyer, the General Counsel.
Good evening. The proposed policy is an update to your school board policy 206, which governs student attendance. We have made no revisions to the policy since it was last presented to you at your meeting of April 26th. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on it or go over any of the details as you like.
Any questions?
The superintendent recommends adoption of the proposed amendments for school board policy 206, student attendance policy.
So moved. Second.
The motion has been properly moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. 2.02.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The proposed policy this evening is also an update presented to you for adoption to your school board policy 303, titled Special Programs and Procedures for Exceptional Students. This is one of your longest policies, along with your Code of Student Conduct. It's presented to you annually. State law requires us to provide an updated set of procedures each year. A link to that document has been attached. Again, there have been no changes to the procedures presented to you at your meeting of April 26th. I'm happy to answer any questions or address any issues as you wish.
Okay. Any questions or issues?
The superintendent recommends adoption of the proposed amendments to school board policy 303. I'm struggling tonight.
Okay.
Special programs and procedures for exceptional students.
So moved.
Second.
The motion is properly moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it, and the motion is carried. Moving to 20.03.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the proposed amendment to school board policy 313, athletics and activities.
The proposed policy provides an update to your athletics and activities policy 313. Again, there have been no changes to this policy since it was last presented to you with a request to advertise on March 29th. And again, the intent behind this amendment is to remove the supplemental restrictions that our policy has in place on student participation in interscholastic extracurricular activities. And we would rely on a state law with regards to those restrictions if this amendment were adopted. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
And our athletic directors and our principals of high schools thoroughly understand their responsibility.
I would say yes, Madam Chair. After the first presentation at the following principals meeting, Mr. Tager and Mr. Moyer spoke to all high school principals, explained the expectations, and also we did meet with the athletic directors as well. The superintendent recommends adoption of the proposed amendments for School Board Policy 313, athletics and activities.
So moved. Second.
The motion has been properly moved and second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it and the motion is carried. Item 20.04.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the proposed amendment to School Board Policy 521, the wellness policy.
The proposed amendment constitutes an update to your student wellness policy. There have been no changes to the proposal as it was last presented to you at your meeting on April 26th. The amendment does reflect incorporation of existing practices of the district on this topic. I'm happy to answer any questions you have on this policy.
Any questions? Mr. Superintendent?
The superintendent recommends adoption of the proposed amendments to School Board Policy 521, the wellness policy.
So moved. Second.
The motion has been properly moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it and the motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to 21.01, approval of superintendent's evaluation. All of you had a chance to look at the superintendent's evaluation, the overall consensus, and maybe look at each of your colleagues' response. Anything you want to add, Mr. Doran?
Just that Chairman Wright and I met, as I have done in every year for the last 14 years, and we think that this represents a consensus record of the comments and a calculation of the various positions that the district or that the board members took, and I think we both would urge approval of the document.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Linda? No? Melanie? No. John? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Doran. Yes, we did. And I agree with Mr. Doran. One of the things we have been saying for a couple of years, I know when Linda and I was on here, about changing the instrument. And so after this meeting, you all had given approval for us to move forward in changing the instrument. But based on what we had, this is the overall review. Have you had a chance to review it?
Yes, I have, Madam Chair.
Okay. Do you have any comments or questions or concerns you would like to address?
No, ma'am.
Okay. But overall, the overall evaluation of the superintendent was outstanding, and we understand that as the superintendent, this was rather a tumultuous first year, but my colleagues and I, we like the fact that we moved from a C to a B district, and the areas that were not marked outstanding or exceed board's expectation, we're confident that you will address those and make the proper adjustments.
That will be done.
Okay. At this time, you've reviewed the document. If there is no further question, is there a motion to accept the evaluation as presented?
So moved. Second.
The motion has been properly moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those that oppose, the same sign. Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you. Items for 21.01, items for board members, starting with Linda Costello.
Well, we all attended most of 10 high school graduations, which is, of course, the culmination of everything that the whole district works towards from kindergarten, even earlier than that. It's always really, really exciting. I did attend 2 fifth grade graduations, and West Side, actually they called it a completion ceremony with caps and gowns, and it was just a wonderful, I think, experience for those students to see themselves in a cap and gown and to believe that they can and will walk across that stage. I think it's in 2023.
Okay.
I went to 9 of the 10 graduations. My daughter graduated on Saturday at 4, so I chose to stay with the family after that. Just an awesome time. Then I went to 2 more to make up for the one. No, I'm kidding. I did Richard Milburn Academy. Just incredible to see those kids. There was 70-some students from both East and West, so they have no shame in being excited over what they've accomplished. And then Legacy Scholars Academy, I was a keynote speaker, and of course I cried because it just means so much to know that these kids have excelled even with despite the adults around them. In all the situations they've been in, they still did it. And there was 5 of them, and I don't, as my old pastor used to say, you couldn't have rubbed off that smile with a brick. They were just so excited, and they had decorated their hats and just so excited with what they'd done. And a donor gave them each a brand new computer, a laptop, and a year's worth of security and help and all this really cool stuff. And I think they'd each gotten nearly $500 in gifts between the churches and everybody supporting them. HOSA had a spaghetti dinner for fundraising with the fire department. Deltona has just really stepped up. And they're, especially the fire department, they keep partnering with the kids between pancake breakfasts and spaghetti dinners with the firemen. Pine Ridge High School had a volunteer breakfast. Halifax Hospital made an incredible donation, and I wanted to get this recorded and publicized. They gave 6 pallets of medical supplies to my students, both high schools. And I had requested, we made a dream list of what we would like in both my high schools, because both of my academy instructors would like to create hospital rooms so the kids can get real life experience. So I approached Halifax. I have a meeting this month with Florida Hospital, and then I'm approaching Central Florida because they're moving into Deltona, and saying, what are you going to do for our students? What are you going to do? How are you going to help us? And Halifax just really, they're just overwhelmed with supplies and excited. And there was a hospital bed in there. There may have been a gurney in there, I heard, and then tons of expired stuff but kids can still use it to practice. So they were all happy. We had a surprise party for Dr. Abernathy and Pam Cox at Olive Garden, and we took up half the Olive Garden. It was pretty cool. And then, of course, Friday's workshop, we all attended and learned lots. So that was my couple weeks.
John?
So I'd like to say publicly thank you to Mrs. Wright for taking over my speech duties at the graduation. It's not very often that I get to talk about my health, but I was not released by my neurosurgeon. Although I wanted to be there, I could not. But I will be there next year, or I plan to be at least. A couple of things. So we, with Halifax being approved to build a hospital there at the end on the Deltona side of 472, I think we need to take advantage to use them not only at Deltona and Pine Ridge, but to allow university to have access to that as well.
They have lots of stuff. I need it for me.
I'm kidding. I mean, just to consider the health academies.
Awesome. They're going to be at both ends.
Yeah, I did go to the HOSA dinner at the fire department there. The girl's eyes bulged out of her head when I made a donation, and we're going to try to work to help establish some internships for the high school students at Deltona in the medical community. The But Halifax should step up to the plate. I talked to one of our county councilmen and one who's running for a seat about the tax exempt status of the hospitals and how there are millions of dollars of property that they own that they pay no property tax every year, and that we need to revisit that because I think it's detrimental for hospitals who don't pay property taxes to keep buying more property and building more facilities without having some ownership back into the community. And so we should encourage them to invest when they're not paying those taxes back into our school system and other things that do a good service in the community. It's an exciting time. I know that there's a lot of things going on in the athletic arena. I've been called to go out, although I haven't, but my office is certainly willing to help with other providers. But it's a good time, and I think we are making good progress in general, so I'm excited about that. Thank you again, Ida.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We missed you.
Mr. Doran? Superintendent Russell?
Yes, Madam Chair. I would like to talk a minute about the graduation side. Of course, it's a culminating activity in K-12 education. I want to thank the principals and their staff. That is a massive undertaking for a high school to do annually. When I was at FADS last week, the Commissioner of Education made a statement that took me back. And after I caught my breath, I was really listening to her, and this is what she said. She said, what she would like to do before she retires is get rid of textbooks in Florida. And what she described was a digital model. Do you know what that digital model looked like? Volusia County's ELA. The module that you all funded last year, and other counties are using, by the way, is exactly what she described. And we're working on our math modules now. I was speaking yesterday, and there were 70 teachers there, and one of them is on the math module development committee, and they're working throughout the summer. But it was interesting to see that shift that she was making, and she made comments that how they could be adapted. Just the things that we've been working on this last year. I was just thought to myself, we are ahead of the curve here in the direction how she envisions materials in the state of Florida. Also next week, it's touching on what Dr. Hill said in his vision statement. We have school leadership teams meeting. And I would encourage you, I can send you all dates and times. There are meetings on both sides of the county. Now, school leadership teams are made up of school administrators and teachers. And theirs is the important task of writing their school improvement plan and their professional development plan for next year. Why is that important to do it in June? We used to wait until the start of school to do that, and it's too late. And so now they can plan their professional development, they can access the services of the district, and then formulate their plans because they review data, they review surveys, they review the history of the school and the direction that they want to take it to ensure that all students receive a 21st century education. So I will send you all dates, and if you're available, I would encourage you just to drop by. Your principals would like to see you, I'm sure. And that concludes my statements.
Okay. Again, so the graduations were very nice. Always enjoy graduations. Linda Cuthbert and I had an opportunity to attend the FSBA annual summer meeting, and one of the hot topics during that meeting was elementary recess. And so, and I'm sure they will have a presentation when you attend the Central Florida Consortium group. But many of the schools are really looking at this to see how and what they can do. I know Lake County had a rather unique plan, but many of our surrounding districts are really looking at this and seeing how they can implement the recess. So I'm sure we will probably hear something soon about that. I attended the roundtable for Volusia County elected officials on yesterday, the superintendent and I, and the hot topic for them is homeless. And during that discussion, at the end of the discussion, I said I was glad they were talking about the topic, but they talked about adults and they talked about men, but they never talked about our children or teenagers. So I told them they're equally as important, and that's one reason why when we talked about the HOPE project, because it had a focus for families that had children, and in addition to that, for our teenagers, the spaces for at least 32 homeless teenagers. Attended the prayer vigil last night with Daytona Beach Police Department, and went to a neighborhood watch meeting right after that. Most of the questions dealt with uniforms, but that neighborhood watch group has decided that they will be donating money to purchase uniforms to donate to the schools in their area. So I thought that was great. Had a chance to attend the Earl McCrary celebration where I was the speaker for their celebration #graduation for 8th grade, and that was very, very good as usual. That was always special because I attended Campbell. And I think that's it for me. This upcoming Saturday, we do have Juneteenth, and we always have a table that we provide parents with information about our different academies. We will have information talking about our summer programs. So if any of you are in the area, please drop by to Daytona Beach Juneteenth activity. I believe it's from 11 to 5 off the corner of North Nova Road and Cypress or George Ingram. And that is it. Nothing else. This meeting is adjourned.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Very nice.